When we talk about the long-term effects of exercise, I think it's really important to realize that we're talking here about adaptations. And when I talk about the word adaptations, we are talking about a long-term, something that happens over a period of time, and a relatively permanent, although it can reverse, a relatively permanent change. So this is not how our body responds to exercise, but this is in the long term. If we exercise and train over months and months and months, what's going to be different internally in that situation? And let's start over here. And over here, I'm going to talk about skeletal changes or skeletal adaptations. So a couple of things. We get stronger bone tissue. Okay, so that, oops, what happened there? We get stronger tissue, and by that I mean bone tissue. And let me take it a little bit further in that description. We get an up arrow, which I like to think is an increase, remember, in what we might refer to as the bone matrix, which sounds like an incredible film, potentially some kind of amalgamation of sort of a sci-fi adventure and Pirates of the Caribbean type. What am I talking about? Anyway, we get an increase in the bone matrix, and the thing to realize here is that bone tissue is developed in what you might call a crisscross. This isn't going well, this video. Crisscross used to be a really rubbish sort of one-hit wonder pop group back in the 80s and 90s, just remember, and they used to wear their jeans back to front. Anyway, crisscross, where'd that come from? So the bone matrix is crisscrossed, okay? And this crisscrossing, this matrix gets thicker. In fact, let me just draw it out for you. Bone is not a series of fibers like this, okay? Bone is a bit more like boom, 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 boom. It's like this. Bone tissue's like this. And the more we exercise, the thicker this matrix becomes, okay? And the thicker that matrix becomes, the stronger the bone. And remember, bones just don't need to be strong. They need to have what we call tensile strength, so they can bend slightly as well. And this helps a lot with that. Think of it a bit like, it's not massively dissimilar to the concept behind something like carbon fiber, for example. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that here. So the other thing that happens skeletally is that we experience a growth or a thickening of cartilage. Of course, cartilage being that sort of shock absorbing end of long bone sort of impact zone, and it ends up cushioning better as a result. And finally, and to an extent, this is a muscular adaptation as well, we get thicker tendons, and those tendons are really important because, you know, if we think about this performer's gastrocnemius here, its tendon is coming down here on the heel, and we see it better maybe on here. We've got the gastrocnemius muscle, and it's coming down and inserting onto the heel. That becomes thicker, and it's able to transmit more force and also resist more force, and therefore get injured less. Now I want to come over here to muscular adaptations or muscular responses, long-term responses. What happens there? Well, a key word for us is the word hypertrophy. Now, if that's the first time you've heard that word, it's a technical term, but basically what it means is that something that was this thick is now this thick. Okay, it's the thickening, engorging, swelling of something. And of course, if muscles hypertrophy, it means they become bigger, they become thicker. In fact, a better way for me to represent it is if we took a cross-section of, let's say, if we took a cross-section of this guy's bicep, which is not inconsiderable, before training, maybe it would look like this, okay, that sort of scale, and after training, and I mean months of training, might look like that. We get a hypertrophy, a thickening, an engorging, okay, so that's what we mean. And it actually happens because it contains more stuff. Now, we've mentioned this already, but we get stronger tendons, good. So we get stronger tendons, that's helpful. But we also get, apparently this is muscular, stronger ligaments and muscle. So your exam board would like me to tell you that ligaments are a muscular adaptation. You may be perceiving in my voice what I think of that. Anyway, let's move on. We are talking about greater numbers and also greater size of mitochondria. Okay, mitochondria are the sites of aerobic respiration. They exist in all cells, all human cells. So these living cells, that is, and they respire to release energy aerobically. And we also have more in the muscle of what we call myoglobin. Myoglobin, think of it like hemoglobin, but in the muscle cell itself. They are both a store and a transportation device for oxygen within the muscle cell. So really nice and useful for us, and that we have more of that, and that helps us. Let's think about our CV adaptations. We like to do our CV stuff as red, of course. So let's do that. So let's do our cardiovascular. Let's do our cardiovascular adaptations. What have we got here? We've got an increased size of the heart wall. If it's thickening and engorging, guess what word you can use? That's right, hypertrophy. Now this is important, of course, because after lots of training, the heart wall can become more potent, more powerful, stronger, and this can force more blood out of the heart per contraction. Stroke volume meaning more blood per minute cardiac output. Look what my next point is. Up arrow, an increase in stroke volume. Exactly the point I just made, okay? Exactly that point. We get an up arrow increase in, in red blood cell count. I mean, a nice word for you to use if you want to is what's called hematocrit. Now, the average person has 45% of their blood is red blood cells. Exercise over months and months can increase that count, and of course that's impacting. We also get increase in what we call capillarization. And if I was to draw a very rudimentary, for example, this might come in, I'll do this in the middle because it'll come, I'm going to do respiratory. Imagine this is one alveolus, you know, like this is one of those air sacs in the lung. What we're saying here is that we get more capillaries passing by it, okay, and therefore a greater capacity for exchange. So we get increased capillarization. We get a decrease in resting heart rate, and if you think about it, that makes sense because each contraction is releasing more blood, therefore the number of contractions needed at rest is fewer. And we also, I'm just going to write it in for you. Your exam board want me to tell you lactic acid. Okay, I'm assuming they mean we become better at removing it. Okay, I'm assuming that's what they want me to tell you, but yeah. So I'll put that one in there for you. And finally, guys, we're going to look at respiratory adaptations, things that change long-term about respiratory. This is a really good one. We get an increased strength of respiratory muscles. And this is really impacting, guys. Let me bring my microphone a bit closer. Of respiratory muscles. Now, let's just address this a second. See if we can just take this a little touch further. Let me just drag back up to our images here. What we're saying here is that the diaphragm here, the intercostals in the ribs, they're going to get stronger. They're going to become more powerful, more potent. That means we can lift the ribs up further and stronger. Okay, that means we can take more air, and so long our tidal volume goes up. But also goes up is our capacity to take a maximal breath, and that is an increase in vital capacity. Remember, that's really interesting. As we said before, we get more capillaries. We get more capillaries around alveoli, alveoli being the plural. Remember, I drew one alveolus, which is a singular. Okay, one alveolus. This is multiple alveoli, and therefore, as a result, we get an increase in gaseous exchange. Okay, so hopefully that will all make sense to you. So these are the adaptations that training, that long-term exercise will bring about. Adaptations are relatively permanent, and they happen because of, let's call it weeks and months, maybe even years of training, weeks and months, not one single session, but over and over again. Cheers.